Welcome to Shape the Podcast. It's a podcast all about maintaining mental health by sharing stories from those who have overcome negative experiences and feelings and then turned them into something positive. Meet your host.
Oh, hey, what's up, everybody? Kyle back at you. Welcome to another episode of Shape the Podcast. If you notice, I'm not at home. All right? This episode is actually a pre-recorded episode. I'm in downtown Hamilton, Ohio, at a gallery called Strauss Art Gallery. And I'm here with Nicole Mix. She has a great event coming up on July 11th, which is benefiting mental health. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but we're going to get into her story as well because she has a story. Everybody has a story, just some people are afraid to share it. But I hope you all have had an enjoyable 2 weeks since our last podcast. Life is lifing. It's been crazy. It's been crazy busy for me in my life and work. But when this podcast airs, I'll be getting ready to go to Gatlinburg. As you know, I do the whole bearding thing, and I'll be there with the Smoky Mountain Body Art Expo, 3-day tattoo event, but we're also going to be putting on a beard mustache contest on Saturday the 19th, right? And that's going to benefit the Appalachian Bear Rescue, because everything that the bearding community does is charity beard. All the funds raised towards that beard mustache competition are going to go towards the bears. But anyways, welcome, Nicole. Thanks for joining me today. I was cruising around Facebook, and I always see stuff that David posts. And I saw him post about your event. And I was like, I need to be a part of this. I need to talk to this human being because there's a reason why she's doing this event. So just introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. My name is Nicole Mix, and I live here in Hamilton currently, but I've been doing art for several years. Probably the past 10 years of my life, art has been very important. So I'm an artist and poetry writer, and recently in the past few years gotten into some photography, but my art has been a huge way for me to express my emotions and engage with my own healing journey and help the community with spreading a message about mental health and talking about mental health and the issues that are at the core of the healing process, and that's a big part of our journey.
You talk about that, and you said our journey, but what about your journey? What led you to make the change in your life to get involved with mental health and in doing that?
Well, my journey probably started in high school, really. I had a suicide attempt in high school, and I got involved with drugs pretty early. So that led me to, when I was in graduate school in Texas, I was in a pretty abusive relationship that was really transformative. When I left that relationship, I got into counseling and I started to learn what it means to actually love yourself. But before then, I feel like my life kind of was like a shit show, or turned into one because of some stuff I needed to work on. So once I got out of that situation, I started really working on myself, and art became a huge part of that process for me. And
it's funny, you talked about being in those relationships, those toxic, negative relationships. I'm sure everybody at one point has probably had one of those, either indirectly or directly. I know that a lot of my life, I created that toxic relationship. My last relationship before I got married to my wife we were both toxic people. And two toxic people together, you're going to make an explosion. But it's glad that you were able to get out. Because not that many people escape those relationships. You hear a lot about domestic violence and domestic, abuse, and you see that men and women, they keep on going back because that's all they know. You know, it's like, oh, she says she loves me, or he says he loves me. Well, that just means more to me than anything. And so they go back. And what happens? The beatings and everything, and the mental and emotional stress, you know, because abuse just isn't about hitting somebody, you know, it's mental, you know, like in today's society, bullying, you know, like it's crazy how many people are getting bullied these days, and the suicide rate, you know, because of that. Like you see every week, you know, there's somebody out there committing suicide, you know, like, or you see, you know, like just recently here in Ohio, there was a young lady that got killed, you know, all because of her husband, or ex-husband had some domestic stuff in the past and let that fire refuel, and he went and killed this young lady, you know. But yeah, it's good to see that you were able to get out of that toxic.
Yeah, and I can relate to what you said about two toxic people coming together, because I'm not a complete victim of the situation. I was absolutely had a lot of stuff to work on, and I contributed to the relationship itself too. And a lot of those issues came from abandonment issues. Those are things I've addressed like more in my recent adulthood over the past 2 years in therapy, but I wasn't aware of those issues. So they caused me to stay in a situation where I was afraid to leave because I was afraid of abandonment, but I didn't know how to really like language that or understand that, because at the time I didn't know what that was. And I wasn't introduced to that like ideology, I guess, or something.
Yeah.
It came later.
And you know, you're talking about abandonment, and this is a big thing, is that you can be in a relationship and think everything is great and be miserable on the inside. You know, we have to love ourselves, you know, and if you can't love yourself for who you are, then there's that abandonment issue, you know, because if you love yourself and you love the human being that you are truly, then the abandonment issue goes away, because you're more than that, you know. But we all want to be loved, and we all want to be respected, and we all want, you know, the things in life that a relationship brings us, you know. Yeah, it sucks, the whole abandonment thing of a relationship being like, all right, what if this doesn't work? You know, now I'm back to single Nicole, you know, living my life over again, you know, and it's a scary thing to have to do that, you know, especially in today's society. You know, growing up, dating and stuff like that, when I was growing up, it was totally different, you know. Now it's the hookup culture is crazy these days, you know, and a lot of people will get into that because they're afraid of being abandoned. So what do they do when they break up with somebody? Well, it's the hookup culture. I'm going to move on to the next fly on the wall. I'll hook up with them, you know, they'll tell me that they love me and all this stuff, and then we'll get together. Well, you're not healing yourself if that continues, you know. And I know that, like for me, in my past relationships before I got married, I never was able to properly heal myself. My answer was, well, I'll find another one, you know, and I'll find another one, and so that the healing process was never there, you know. And that's why I had the, like for me, that's why I dealt with suicide, you know, because I felt like you did. You know, I felt unloved. I felt abandoned. I felt like people didn't care. Well, in all reality, people did care. I just wasn't doing the work needed to make my life better, you know. So it's good to see that, you know. It's good to make the clarification of that part of your life. So, I mean, it's scary. So what did you do after all that? After the toxic relationship ended, you know, was it completely just, I'm done, we're I'm walking away.
Pretty much, yeah. I was kind of like entangled for like a summer while I was still in Texas, just emotionally. But once I was finished, I knew I was absolutely done with the relationship. But I had to kind of pick up the pieces that relationship tore me into, because it got to the point at the end of it that, and this was real for me, I couldn't look in the mirror. I couldn't look in the mirror without feeling incredible amounts of shame. So I had to learn how to love myself. And I started seeing a counselor who somehow inspired in me the feeling of worthiness. And that's what led me to have the courage to walk away. So that started my whole journey of like self-love. And so I started really immersing myself into what it means to love yourself. And when I moved to Ohio pretty quickly after that, maybe within a year.
And why Ohio? From Texas?
My family's originally from Ohio. I'm not from Ohio. I was raised in South Carolina, but my mom and dad are both from Ohio. So my mom was here, and I was moving closer.
Yeah.
And I just went on this whole journey of like learning to love myself.
Yeah.
I started even exploring like what it was like to cradle myself and learning how to self-soothe and talk to myself kindly. I really learned what positive self-talk was, and that took a lot of support. I needed a counselor through that process, and I couldn't do it alone. So getting help was a huge part of that. And I value therapy very much, and I have a therapist currently still, and we really work through a lot of these things. I'm in an EMDR right now. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not. Yeah, why don't you tell everybody about that?
EMDR is, I forget what that word stands for, so I'm not going to try, but you basically, it's binaural stimulation. So you might want to reprocess a trauma with your therapist while you're looking at a light beam go back and forth.
Right.
And you will talk about the situation and watch the light beam. And then, so I'm even hold these like vibrating buzzers that go back and forth. So the idea is that as your brain is being stimulated from left to right, it gives you a chance to reprocess trauma. And it actually has been super effective. I've been working with for a year and a half, and like
Wow.
I've worked through some really deep stuff just through the EMDR. I also, I wrote a book, and so this is my book. It's Lost Parts from Out of the Shadows, and this is a poetry and art book. This book was founded on a therapy called Internal Family Systems Therapy. It's IFS, and I'm really passionate about EMDR and IFS, and that's about like inner child work and learning how to love like all parts of yourself.
Yeah.
So each poem and art piece in this book is a part. Like this one is the I need to feel safe. And so this is an art piece like representing that part within me that needs to feel safe, and a poem that represents that. So my art is depicting my story of healing, coming into wholeness and integration. And I share it with people because a few years ago, one of my best friends committed suicide, and that was super shattering. And I just thought we need to talk about mental health because maybe we could prevent this happening again and like break the stigma.
Yeah. And that's the big thing, is that that's why I create this podcast. You know, I create this podcast for individuals to come on and talk about their mental health. You know, like so many people are afraid, they're afraid to open up, but then they're afraid, oh, well, if I open up, what will people that don't know me think? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what people who don't know you think.
Right.
You know, because your story is your story. And if your story helps somebody else, you know, it's like a wildfire. You know, it spreads, you know? And it's like this podcast, I don't go to therapy. I should probably go to therapy, but like me doing this is my therapy. You know, like I tell people all the time, this isn't, what I do isn't mine. It's the world's, you know, it brings together people that normally would not have talked about what they talk about, you know? So therapy's a great thing, you know, talking about it's a great thing. Because if you don't talk about it, if you ball up on the side, sooner or later, it's going to go somewhere. It's either going to be all that out, or you'll ball up inside so much that you won't be able to handle it anymore, you know? It
could cause physical health issues too.
Yeah.
Like some parts of my mental health journey, I was dealing with so much that I started to develop some like actual like conditions with my body, like that started manifesting because of the stress. So like I feel really strongly that we should process it for your health.
Yeah, mental health if you don't take care of your mental health, it can lead you to become sick. And that's like, I saw something on Facebook the other day. They were talking about how they were talking about physical health, and then they were talking about mental health. And I said, they kind of go hand in hand, because if you don't take care of your physical health, then your mental health will get
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's awesome what you're doing in writing and doing, art, because that's a good release for therapy. And you actually see that there's a lot of people that will offer mental health art, to release that, and art tells a story, it's not just, it's artwork, behind every piece of artwork, especially here in the gallery, behind every piece of artwork, there's a person that has a story that did that, and which leads me to some of your artwork back here, or even on the floor beside you.
This one I like to show because I'll put it a little closer to the screen.
Yeah.
This one's called Half Beast, Half Human. I always change the name a little bit every time, but it's actually a depiction of somebody what it's like to live with addiction. But I've also, left it up into interpretation of what it's like to live with just your inner demons.
Yeah.
So we all have shame, and shame has been a huge part of my journey of looking at healing shame, like the things that we keep to ourselves and we don't share with people, and that we bottle up and we repress because shame. We don't share our story. We don't talk to other people because we're embarrassed about this thing. And so bringing things up that, I have been ashamed about and sharing them with someone important, someone I trust, whether it be a therapist or my close friend, and it's been incredibly powerful for me to do, and has helped me love myself more. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's hard because, you want to share that with the people that you know and the people that you trust. But I'm sure that there's been times where you're like, I could do more, and speaking of doing more, you're going to be doing that. You have an event coming up, right?
Yeah, this will be, I've been running events for a few years now, mostly based from my art, and then last year I held a suicide awareness mental health art show here. Well, we're following that up this year with one called Celebrating Creative Community. It's on July 11th here at Strauss Gallery in Hamilton. That's 220 High Street in Hamilton, Ohio. It's from 2 to 8, and we will have over 25 artists, a lot of live painters. We have people in the gallery who are presented on the exhibit, and as well as music. So the idea is to celebrate community, celebrate the art community, but community, I think, is just a really big part of mental health. We need to get out of isolation, and I think COVID really brought that out for us, is how harmful that isolation can be, because I think a lot of people went through depression and anxiety around the pandemic because we weren't allowed to touch each other. We had to stay home, and so the idea behind the event is to just spread the word about mental health and exhibit some artists who have a really powerful message, and my art will be included in that with other people, and talk about mental health. We'll have a collaborative painting outside that people can contribute to, anybody, and so I want to inspire in people that there's an inner artist and that you are creative, and that the only thing holding you back from creating whatever that is your inner critic. So I really want to support people in terms of their creativity, and nourishing your creativity is a huge, huge part of mental health too. Is we all have that inner self, that playful inner child that wants to express itself, whatever that is, whether it's creatively or you do take on baking or you garden outside. There's a creative part of you, and nurturing that is super important for your health, your mental health.
Yeah, and it's good that you talk about that, because I remember COVID like it was yesterday, and before COVID, my life was so go, 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 go. I actually enjoyed it when everything shut down.
I agree. I did enjoy the slowdown.
I was able to work still, because at the time I was able to work from home, but then I worked at a liquor store part-time. So for some reason, the state of Kentucky thought liquor was needed at that time, and I'm sure it did. But it was like during that time, it was a time of, okay, I don't need some of the stuff I've been doing in my life anymore. One of those was a relationship. One of those was letting go of something that I thought I was passionate about, that I stepped away from, and now I'm kind of involved in that again. But like, yeah, did it suck to see what people went through, like all the deaths and everything and stuff like that, and all the people not being able to visit people. Yeah, it did. But like for my life, it was a peace like no other.
Well, I agree with you, by the way, because when COVID happened, it slowed me down, and I actually started selling my art around COVID, and that really launched me into being creative. I mean, not creative, but like being more like trying to support myself with my income with art. And I think a lot of people started thinking outside the box and wondering what they could do to like make income differently. But I guess what I was just pointing out is that I knew that COVID affected some people in my life in a negative way in terms of the isolation and fear and stuff. And I only brought that up because I think community is super important in terms of us not, isolating from each other and talking about these subjects and stuff.
It's very important. Like it's needed. What I'm doing in with this podcast and what you're doing with your art and what you're doing on July 11th is needed. Because you might have somebody there that is going through some shit in their lives, and they might come, and then next thing you know, they might see something that touches them, and they might see a friendly face, somebody for them to talk to, like, yeah, I needed this, I need to be here, and that's what it's really all about. You're holding space for individuals to come in and just be, and it's okay for that, and yeah, you might have some individuals come in and like they might share their stories and stuff like that, and it's one of those things where once you share a story with somebody, then you hope that story resonates and touch others' lives, and you're doing that through your artwork.
Yeah,
you're also remembering your friend that committed suicide.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest intentions behind sharing art in this manner is that wanting people to not feel alone. Like, you're not alone. Like, the feelings that you feel and the like difficulty and the challenge of those heavy emotions, whether it be anxiety or depression and like just your journey, that you're not alone, and that there are other people out there that have been through it and experiencing those emotions as well. And my art has been a way for me to let people know that, because I feel my emotions very deeply. I've always been that way since, and that's why that addiction has become, well, one, it was genetic because it runs in my family, addiction, but the other part was that it was a coping mechanism to deal with some of the trauma.
Yeah.
And so it's not a healthy coping mechanism, but it's a coping mechanism, but it's because I would feel things just so deeply, and it was a way to numb out. So yeah, you're not alone, and that's what the art is meant to inspire in people, that what they're experiencing, there's other people too that have gone through it. Because not everybody's sharing their story. It's the thing with mental health, and why I talk about it is there's a stigma around it. I don't think that we need to sit in a therapist's room and talk about it. I think we need to talk with each other. We need to talk to our loved ones. We need to open up to people. This should be normalized conversations about talking about what we're experiencing emotionally. I just feel that we have a stigma around it, and it's supposed to be reserved to the counseling room or something like that. It's supposed to be reserved to, you're only supposed to talk about of course you want to be picky about who you open up to. You want it to be a safe place and someone you can trust. But I do think that we should feel more comfortable talking about these things with each other. And that's part of what my intention is with it, is that don't be afraid to share your story.
Like for me, this is my safe place.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, like I've had some people come on and share some deep stuff. I have a couple of guests lined up in the future, and I know their backstories, and I cannot wait to have them come on, because it's deep, and it's some of it's dark, but they're willing to share, and anybody out there, you don't have to come on a podcast to talk about your mental health. you just have to be willing to open up to somebody, So, and that's what it takes.
And I think there's some power in just being seen by somebody. For somebody holding space for you and hearing you and being seen, like there's something healing about it, and what you're doing is really, really important.
Yeah, it is. Well, I know that this isn't like my normal podcast, everybody. I know it's different. I like it. But if you are in the Cincinnati, Dayton area, July 11th, down here in beautiful Hamilton, Ohio, off of Main Street, check out the Strauss Art Gallery. Check out that awesome show that Nicole's going to be doing. I'm going to be here. I'm going to try to get some interviews with some people, some snippets here and there, because that's just where my passion is right now. But I thank you all for watching this. I thank you all for being a part of my life the past couple of years. And if you need anything, reach out. Don't be afraid, because life is better with you in it than 6 feet under. All right. Talk to you later, everybody. Have a good one.